Welcome to the J.R. Hendrick Texan Gentleman podcast that deals with the early life of yours truly. And now, narrating in A State of Fervor, myself and Jimmy. November 5th, 1995, 5 a.m. Mountain. Jimmy's lying on a couch in the mansion owned by Marlena Dietrich. She and her husband had a dreadful fight the night before in Fort Worth. And so, hearing that Jim was going to Salt Lake for a couple of days, she flew up to be with him. 7:30 a.m. Omelets are for breakfast at the Holy Spirit Club when JR sits down next to Connie. How the boys were a little raucous last night, Connie said. Gives a little meaning what Grandma used to say. Always used to say. A Swain gentleman is a Baptist gentleman. I so wish we could change that. It's a little late. I got the senses that something's really wrong with my grandma. So, I wouldn't want to defy her wishes. 9:30 a.m. Jared goes to First Baptist Lubbock, where his pastor is talking about the value of testimony. 11:30 a.m. Bart, JR's Promise Keepers instructor for Sunday school, takes him to his house where the Sunday school class would have a lasagna dinner, lunch dinner with his family. Bart could tell that JR was uneasy about a lot of things to come. 3 p.m. Jared goes to the rent house of Larry Thurber. The back rent house, okay. A friend of mine online named Raynard tells me about this Raynard News underground out of Fort Worth, Larry said. I thought that you ought to know. This could be a way to get you out from under your father. Thanks, Larry. I'll look into it. But I think law school might be the best way. 5 p.m. Central. Jared's having dinner at the Holy Spirit Club when Brent comes to sit with him. Psst. JR, Brent said. Professor Barney is back on campus at the law school. And guess what? The dean of the School of Mass Communications says that John McCormick has to go. No. Says that John McCormick has to go. Brent, what the hell? What did he do to you? Come on! As if you don't know. In 93, it was all over campus, all over the news. That McComb had Bonnie fired. My daddy warned me twice to stay away from campus politics. Well, you are on the student senate, so at least you can vote to affirm Barney to teach undergraduate and law students. This appeared to be a hornet's nest. As when I got back from dinner, I called Grandma Elizabeth, who warns me to stay away from stuff like this. Ironically, Professor Barney would be teaching me in law school the next fall. Okay. Number 6, 1 a.m. Central. At the ranch, Grandma Elizabeth wakes up with some fever. Francine, a night nurse, agreed to put that as a notation on her chart and to call Dr. Bertrand in for a house call this morning. 2 a.m. Central. Kyle wakes up and prepares for his morning duties to feed and milk the cows. He's glad to be back home at the ranch. But there are warning signs of things to come. 6:30 a.m. Central. Cinnamon rolls and apple fritters and boiled eggs are for breakfast. As JR sits down with Brent Clark and C.B. Coleman. I heard you went to see Larry Thurber yesterday, C.B. said. He's alright, JR said. I'm glad it's encouraging you to go to law school, but working at Raynard News? I wouldn't advise it, C.B. said. No, JR said. That sounds like something that Daddy would tell me to do. 7 a.m. Mountain. At the Utah Assembly Hall, Jim is having a private breakfast with Governor Mike Leavitt of Utah. This was a somber day for a solemn assembly for what is known as the Day of the Family, 1995. 9 a.m. Mountain. As the Utah Assembly Hall, President Gordon B. Hinckley and the governor just finished their speeches when Jim was the closing speaker, talking about the Day of the Family, using the Bible and his own feelings. to draw his conclusion. 11 a.m. Central. As Jim gets ready to go on the plane to go back to Washington, D.C., Dr. Bertrand is visiting the family. Mrs. Elizabeth's temperature is 110 now. I've given her some antibiotics, so that should cause the fever to calm down. But I believe with the cancer cells accelerated, she's already entered liver failure. I'm asking each of you to be prepared. She could be gone in less than 2 weeks, Dr. Bertrand said. 1 p.m. Central. JR is in his dorm room when Brent comes and knocks on the door. So what are you doing tonight? Brent said. Study. I got a public policy exam on Wednesday. But I promise you, I will be at the Bible study tomorrow night, Gerald said. I know. She got your focus off Karen. Look. I know it's hard. But sooner or later, you'll find out yourself. I don't want to talk about that. Alright? Let's talk about cheesecake Toastmasters. We may have to ask you to deliver a speech that day. Sure, Gerald said. 2 p.m. From his chartered Learjet, Jim calls and asks for the Dream Team to meet him as soon as he arrives in Washington, D.C. 6 p.m. Jim welcomes the Dream Team and prepares them for dinner. Okay, November 7th, 7 p.m. At the Georgetown University auditorium, Jim is speaking at a forum for Citizens for Limited Government alongside Senator Phil Gramm, Republican strategist Mary Magdalene O'Hara, and Grace Arthur. 11 p.m. Central. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Glenda, the night hospice nurse, has to change Grandma Elizabeth's diapers. Elizabeth is murmuring about how humiliating it is to be in that situation. But as she looks at her dear husband's portrait, she can almost hear him say, "Come on, Missy. It's just a little while." She remembers the way her husband used to comfort her, even though they had no idea with his life it would just be a matter of time. He passed away on December 20th, 1989. And now Elizabeth is longing to meet her husband on the other side. 8 a.m. Central. In public policy class, J.R. turns in his term paper. He had taken his exam early. And Dr. Elliot begins a short lecture. For your term papers, I hope you had a chance to look at the policy history as well as legislative history, because we're going to be going through those things today, and I expect you to be all current on the textbook knowledge and what you found in your theory of research. 11 a.m. Eastern. Jim is speaking at Princeton Collegiate, a private college prep school set up by the Assemblies of Christ. It was set up in 1914 by a group of Josephite deacons and some Elizabethan lady comrades. The Assemblies of Christ Church was founded in Akron, Ohio in 1858. And that was where the academy was. 2 p.m. Central. JR is meeting with the newspaper business board at the Tech College of Business Administration. JR was deeply respected by the newspaper board advisors. Many board members gave him the controversial nickname the Closer due to his disillusions of Nicodemus Foods as a public company. I don't want to do that for into a private company. Larry Thurber agrees to meet with him afterwards. You should watch Greg Sanders on Raynard News tonight, Brent said. How'd JR look? Dr. Kinghorn. He was presenting last weekend in Utah, same as my Dr. Phillips. They think that Clinton is having trouble dictating economic policy because of what's going on with black weather. Sounds interesting. All right. Thank goodness for the last chapter. The last bit of the chapter. Okay. November 9th. 9:30 a.m. Dr. Wild talks... Okay, this is 9:30 a.m. Dr. Wild is obviously substituting for Friedrich McKay. He talks about the congressional platform of Reverend Isaiah Friedman and how flawed it was. Dr. Friedrich McKay was presenting at Johns Hopkins this weekend. 11:20 a.m. JR is defending his thesis on the Red Lion broadcasting case study. When it was time for Dr. Wild to speak, JR took copious notes. Because you see, the following was evident. In the fall of 2018, one of my enemies, who will be mentioned sometime in the future, named Mark Christopher, was trying whatever he could to silence me, using the old theory of the case of the fairness doctrine. How pathetic it was for me. 1 p.m. Eastern at 14 Heritage Gate. Jim is being interviewed, is in the upstairs veranda over the balcony, being interviewed by his press agent, John Sestina. This was to be released for Friday's Less is More program on CBNC. This was to be his last TV appearance on CBNC, because that Friday, Raynard Network was to be relaunching their news outlet in Fort Worth, Texas. And Daddy would only contact with them because they had programmers like Greg Sanders, Rather Jackson, Liam Spencerton, Raynard Evening News, with Lot Bernstein. This was to be an unapologetic underground conservative TV to rival all other except for Newsmax. 3 p.m. Central at the ranch. Betsy is sitting there talking to her mother, who was placed on the patio for some fresh air, who said maybe she should have bolted from the ranch and found another man before the cancer hit. But Tom begged her not to. In tears, Betsy told her mother that she didn't care if in 1992 and 1993, if she had found someone, a fellow cancer patient, to enjoy life with. 3:30 p.m. Central. JR is summoned to the business school for what, surprise, was going to be one of his classrooms next semester. He was to meet with someone associated with his father. I suppose you don't know me, Junior. The 58-year-old man with a cowboy hat said. No, sir. I don't, Jared said. I was your daddy's classmate at SMU. And if I may be so bold, he was reckless for going into the oil industry alone. I told him that there were other investments. Why the hell would you want to talk to me, sir? You know the news. President Clinton is getting ready to declare a government shutdown. The economy chances to suffer some more. You need a new partner. Someone who knows well more about business. Who? Ken walks into the classroom. Me. JR, you know it's inevitable. I am the head of the business editorial board of the Daily Raider, along with Brent, Ken said. Your father was a fool for letting you buy these companies, but with not much help. I'm company I'm interested in. Bristol Monarch. Your hypermasculine father didn't tell you this. This business has the potential to become an international conglomerate. In fact, it already is. How did you... Your daddy's friend here? Arthur Goldsmith? Arthur gave me the money. You see, as your father is out politicking all over the country, he neglected to tell you what the hell was going on. Sure, your family may be in the board, but your mother is going to agree because your grandmother is dying. I am your new business partner. Oh, hell. Oh, hell yes, JR said. Come to my room tomorrow. Sometime tomorrow. And we established a joint partnership. Ken hugs his friend. A marriage between the son of a soda pop king and an up-and-coming mega successful entrepreneur. $7 p.m. Central. Jared has just got back from dinner at the Holy Spirit Club when a knock comes to the door. It's Kristen. Well, darling, how did you get here? Jared said, opening the door and beckoning her in. I take a shuttle, just like you. Look, I want to talk to you. You won the debate in Dallas. Regardless of what happened last week, Kristen said. I haven't won a thing. Kristen begged JR. Kristen begged, please, JR. I already know. It's common knowledge around campus that you wanted that you won that debate in Fort Worth? You didn't do it for your mother. You didn't do it for Karen. Which, by the way, is playing a game with you. Look, she may be seeing a different man, but you're better than you ever was. JR pours her a Dr. Pepper. What are you trying to say, honey? All I'm saying is all our lives, you and I have always felt like we had to prove something to somebody. You to your hyper-masculine father, and me to my damn hyper-feminine mother. That's why I came to Texas Tech, to get away from her. Gerald sighs. James Ryan Hendrick Jr. I've always admired you. I've always thought about how cute you are. But I didn't want to say anything because we were both seeing somebody else. The gentleman's code. I don't play the field. That's the ladies' code too that was taught to me by my nanny. She was disappointed on how my mother and aunts lived by it. So she passed it down to me. 9 p.m. Central. Gerard calls Kristen a shovel, and he walks her out there in front of Sneed Hall to wait for it. She is very skittish in the cold. So Gerald huddles her close. It's obvious he's starting to take a liking to her. 5 a.m. Eastern. Jim wakes up in his bedroom and goes to the Dream Team Lounge for some coffee. Yesterday, he learned that Jack Robertson and his wife Lucy will be accompanying him for his rally tomorrow in Topeka, Kansas, and back to D.C. Jim is ready to send an email to let Christine know when he's coming home. On the morning of the 13th, he would fly commercially to Dallas, and then Mike Fields would fly him home in the Swingfield helicopter. 10 a.m. Eastern. The Hendrick entourage are well on their way for the flight from Washington, D.C. to Topeka, Kansas. 11 a.m. Central. JR is in West Hall taking an exam for his political communications class. Christine Murray was having a TA supervise the classroom during the exam because she was flying to Baltimore to present herself at Johns Hopkins University. 1 p.m. Central. JR is having Taco Villa for lunch with Uncle Carl and Grandma Mary. Honey, you look famished, Grandma Mary said. Does your dad ever talk to you at all? Carl said. No. He's too busy politicking, Gerald said. Please don't tell me that you're out pursuing that Karen Crider, Grandma Mary said. I thought that might be over, Mama, Carl said. Donna gets irate when she looks at the gossip papers and sees her with someone else knowing that JR was so good to her. The daughter of the feminist is so unfitting for a Hendrick, Grandma Mary said. Now you're sounding a lot like Daddy, Jared said. Well, I raised him much of the time. His daddy was off always, gone, doing something. I mean, when he was home and not drinking, and restless, he was beautiful. But once the Korean War started, Jim started longing for his daddy. And what he couldn't get, he got from Grandpa Hendrick. Eventually, when we moved back to Texas, he turned to Uncle Jim. Carl spoke up. Well, Jim didn't know. He got him that car from a dealership thanks to the Dixie Mafia. 2 years later, Uncle Jim went to that same dealer to get Jim an even slicker car. And then, if you can believe it, the sooner that car dealership ended up wildcatting with him. 2 p.m. Central. Grandma Elizabeth asked Brandy, a hospice nurse, to get her escorted by stretcher out to the front of the ranch. Kyle is getting ready to take the bulls on a couple of rodeos. Kerrville, Lubbock, and San Marcos, before returning home on the 14th. 5 p.m. Eastern. Jim and his entourage are having dinner in the mansion owned by his Aunt Eunice. Now Eunice was 80 years old and confined to wheelchair and could only eat soft foods. But she was very pleased to see Jim for the first time in many years. Eunice had become very wealthy thanks to marriage to her husband Paul in 1935. Paul was an aerospace engineer who died in 1980 during an accident. Staying in the mansion with Eunice was her daughter, Heather, whose husband Travis was a wealthy financier who helped guide the family through the tough times of the 1980s. I'm sure pleased as punch that you're here, Jim, Eunice said. The last time I remember seeing you, you were 8. Oh no, that that just ain't true, Aunt Eunice. Remember, I came 16 years ago for Thanksgiving. Brought Betsy, Jim, brought Betsy, Kyle, Junior. I always felt sorry for Junior. He was so quiet, so shy, so sickly. But Kyle was the rambunctious one. I bet your daughter, Christine, she's the apple of your eye. What makes you think that? Jim asked. That daddy of yours, the dirty rat, he always thought it was Carl and left you alone. Jim stood up from the table. No, I don't want you to feel sorry for my firstborn. He may still be a little sickly, but he is now the owner of a major food distribution company. What? But the doctors. Aunt Eunice, I'm sorry, but I never believed a damn thing those doctors said about my boy. Hope you enjoyed listening to the J.R. Hendrick, ladies and gentlemen. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, become a part of the adventure. This is the James Hendrick Empowerment Network saying until next time, get ready for the rest of the story. It gets more interesting from here.